wife? A son.
And then what?
We won the war. Help me go home.
This is a household waiting for master. I want you to choose me.
Ithaca's king is coming back.
No, he's not.
What would he do if he came back here and find all these suitors in his house?
They're pining for a daddy you didn't even know, like some sniveling bastard.
Who's looking after your wife and son?
Do you see?
My dad is coming home.
Bringing vengeance.
Bringing it all.
I need everyone at this party dead.
I can still save them.
You're a man who needs to control his fate. But you cannot control this.
That world is gone.
No one could stand between me and home. Not even the gods.
Keep us straight!
I think it's asleep.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. Christopher Nolan dropped a brand new Odyssey trailer. There's a whole bunch of new footage, Easter eggs, references, so we will break it all down. Really feels like they're leaning into all the Batman, Spider-Man energy with all the extra Tom Holland and Robert Pattinson footage that they hype up during this too. Christopher Nolan didn't put them both in this movie because of that. It's just a coincidence because so many of the big actors of Hollywood, like real big actors, wanted to be in this movie. Most of Hollywood is in this movie. The opening scene here seems like Odysseus after his last remaining ship was destroyed and his remaining crew were killed, and he's the only survivor at this point, even though they jump across the timeline back and forth a lot through the trailer, especially through this opening montage. He looks much older at this point. You can actually chart the timeline of the trailer based on the length of his beard and his hair color and whether or not he's wearing armor at all. Here there's a lot more gray in his hair and his clothes are in tatters at this point. This might be after Zeus asked Helios to punish them, which he did by destroying their last remaining ship. Odysseus was the sole survivor and washes up on the shore of Calypso's island, played by Charlize Theron, which he was trapped by her for 7 years.
And then what?
So it makes sense that they're opening the trailer with him crashing on her beach, and she's narrating the voiceover asking him what he remembers. This might be when he first crashes on the beach, not after 7 years, because there are a couple moments later in the trailer where you see him look much older and much more despondent and pleading with her, like begging her to let him leave, which is clearly towards the end of that 7-year period. The whole idea with her character is that she wants him to stay on her island and be her immortal husband, like she'll make him immortal and he'll just live with her forever, which the gods, particularly Zeus, is not very pleased with. The irony here is that Zeus was one of the reasons why he wound up crashing on her beach in the first place, but then later Zeus winds up intervening to force Calypso to let him leave. He remembers his wife Penelope back in Ithaca, played by Anne Hathaway. This scene of the two of them together, notice there's no gray in his beard and it's shorter, his hair's properly cut, styled. So this seems like a flashback to earlier in the timeline before he leaves for the Trojan War. He remembers his son Telemachus, played by Tom Holland, but the funny thing about this is that Telemachus was a baby when he left for the Trojan War, and he's gone from Ithaca for 20 years, so that's why you see older Tom Holland, like 20-something Tom Holland, in most of the trailer footage in present day. This is also one of the reasons why Telemachus doesn't know what his father looks like, so when he eventually returns to Ithaca, he doesn't recognize him. Normally you'd think a son would recognize his father, but he was a baby when he left, so of course he doesn't remember what he looks like. When he's on the ship here, though, he's out looking for his father, he's finally decided he needs to search for his father, and spends a lot of the story, especially in the early parts of the story, searching for him. Athena, played by Zendaya, Tom Holland's real-life waifu is Odysseus' patron goddess, helps Telemachus on his quest to find Odysseus, but she's under strict orders from Zeus to not interfere directly in Odysseus' life, so she can't just pluck Odysseus up from somewhere else in the world and stick him back on Ithaca herself. I'm sure a lot of people who aren't familiar with the story of the Odyssey will go into this movie saying, well, if she's a goddess, why doesn't she just use her godly power to help him out? It's because Zeus won't let her. So the idea is that she helps Odysseus in every sneaky, roundabout way that she can without violating Zeus's orders. Most of the footage with Tom Holland's Telemachus character you see in Ithaca, though, particularly going up against Antonius, Robert Pattinson's character, a whole lot of Batman versus Spider-Man energy going on during this, more like evil Batman versus Spider-Man. Early in the story, after he spends time searching for Odysseus, he eventually decides to return to Ithaca to try and manage and keep a tab on the suitors because they become such a big problem. Robert Pattinson's Antonius is one of the three most prominent suitors and one of the worst ones. This is why he seems so aggressive in all of his scenes in the trailer. When he's talking to Penelope, he seems certain that Odysseus will never return, so she has to marry him, and he seems like he gets really stabby with Telemachus and orders his death, talking to some of the other suitors here.
I need everyone at this party dead.
Generally, Antonius is not a good dude, like you'll be rooting for his death. Robert Pattinson is also playing a very bad dude, big villain during Dune Part 3 named Scytale, which also stars Zendaya. There's going to be a lot of 6 degrees of separation happening this year because we also have Spider-Man Brand New Day with Tom Holland and Zendaya. Like Zendaya just in a whole lot of movies this year, a lot of real big movies. Odysseus then continues telling his story to Calypso. He remembers the Trojan War, the events of the Trojan Horse. There was a lot of footage of that in one of the previous trailers, but I don't know if I can include it in this because Travis Scott's character was revealed in it, but that was the trailer that Universal kept super banning. They're weirdly banning people reposting some of the trailers, but not all the trailers. I think that's just a side effect of Christopher Nolan not wanting all the footage to be online and only some of it. But even if you do not remember grade school or high school history, you probably remember the events of the Trojan Horse. They covered a lot of the Trojan War during the events of that Brad Pitt Troy movie in the early 2000s. That's basically like the prequel to the Odyssey story. Odysseus and the Greeks go to Troy to fight over Helen of Troy, defeat them, and then you get the events of the Odyssey when he tries to make it home and fails for the next 20 years. During the early battle scenes here in the trailer, the person in very hardcore Batman-looking armor that you also saw in the previous trailer, it was memed very heavily because it's Christopher Nolan, is Benny Safdie, who's playing Agamemnon, king and leader of the Achaean forces here. He was played by Brian Cox during the original Troy movie. Jon Bernthal here is playing his younger brother, Menelaus, king of Sparta. The entire Trojan War here began as a result of Menelaus' wife Helen fleeing to Troy with her Trojan prince, Paris. This was all covered during that early 2000s Brad Pitt Troy film. Maybe they'll try and put that back in theaters before the Odyssey drops, or they'll just tell people to watch that before they go see the Odyssey. Christopher Nolan is typically a word-perfect kind of director, like if it's in his script, he wants it in the movie, so we will see if Jon Bernthal's meme survived into this movie. Let me tell you something about the Trojan War. Then this next scene during the day seems like a totally different scene of Odysseus after being Calypso's prisoner for 7 years on the island, and he's begging her now to let him leave. And it's actually, like I said, Zeus who intervenes to get her to release him, which she really, really did not want to do. Even though Zeus had earlier punished him and led to him being stranded on her island in the first place, he declares it's not Odysseus' destiny to become her mortal husband and live there forever, so she has to let him go after a lot of complaining to the gods about them interfering in the lives of mortals. When you see him walking on the beach alone as an older man here in the same clothing, it's an example of what his life was like over those 7 years while he was trapped on her island. He spent his days crying on the beach and then his nights forced to sleep with her over and over again. Sort of like a death by snoo-snoo kind of situation.
Death! By snoo-snoo! Yeah!
When you see the shot of Penelope with the bow, it's actually Odysseus' bow, and this is like literally the end of the Odyssey story. So like we're getting scenes from like the very end of the movie. The whole idea with this scene is that Penelope challenges the suitors to string Odysseus' bow, which only he can do, and hit a crack shot through 12 axe heads successfully, saying that she'll marry the first suitor who can actually do it. But nobody can do it. The funny thing about this scene, though, is that she decides to make this challenge to all the suitors during a conversation that she's having with Odysseus himself, her husband, who has returned, but because so much time has gone by, like he's been gone for 20 years, he looks so different, nobody but his dog, who we see later in the trailer in a couple different time points, recognizes him, not even his wife. So part of the comedy of this, like the big hero reveal, is that she challenges him to make the shot, thinking that he's just another common suitor. None of the suitors are even able to string the bow, so his son Telemachus tries to do it, but Odysseus stops him before he can try, then revealing himself to Penelope and everyone else like, "Surprise, everyone! It is I, Odysseus, and I have returned." There are also a couple of scenes later in the trailer after he's already returned to Ithaca at the end of the story with other characters that I'll point out when we get to that point in the trailer. We get the scene of Odysseus and his men inside the Cyclops, Polyphemus's cave. This is earlier in their voyage home, like at the very beginning. You can tell because they still have their armor from the war, and there are many of them who are still alive. They were captured by the Cyclops. Odysseus then deceptively calls himself Nobody, escapes by intoxicating him and blinding him in his one giant eye. However, he boastfully reveals his true identity while they're busy escaping, and Polyphemus asks his father, Poseidon, the god, to take revenge, leading to him being struck off course in the whole circumstances of the Odyssey, where he's not able to return home for 20 years. So really, it's their encounter with the Cyclops here that is the inciting event of the Odyssey itself, and this giant voyage of him trying and failing to make it home for so long. Then we go back to Ithaca. This is John Leguizamo, who's playing Eumaeus, Odyssey's swineherd, who's talking to his son Telemachus, and he's also the first person that Odysseus meets when he finally makes it back to Ithaca 20 years later. I think that scene later in the trailer here, where you see older Odysseus talking to Eumaeus, saying bringing vengeance and bringing it all, is after he's returned to Ithaca, like the very end of the story, before he's gone to the castle in the whole event with the bow and him unveiling himself to everyone. Then we get that controversial scene where Robert Pattinson uses the word daddy and Tom Holland also uses the word dad during the trailer. A lot of people were up in arms about this because the term dad wasn't used till much, much later in actual history. In context, if they were being really period accurate, they would use the term father. During this next scene with all the black sand, this is Odysseus and his crew traveling to the underworld on the advice of Circe to speak with the prophet Tiresias, who gives them advice on how to return home. And while he's in the underworld, he also gets to speak with Achilles, played by Elliot Page here. If you were wondering, I believe he's playing Achilles. I don't know if that's been announced officially, but I think that's who he is.
Who's looking after your wife and son?
The whole reason why Achilles is trapped by Hades in the underworld, like why he's here in the first place, is because he signed a contract with Hades to ensure his lover, Patroclus, could reside in Elysium, which they dealt with a little bit during the events of the Brad Pitt Troy movie. A little bit. Then I think this older person who asks him if he sees is Tiresias. Then I think this scene of them on the ship putting their armor back on is after they're down to only one ship, the others have been destroyed, and most of his men are dead, but there's still a handful left. A lot of people also asking what's happening here with the giant armored men throwing them around. I think these are the Laestrygonians, a group of cannibals larger than men, like much bigger, but they're not giants, who want to eat Odysseus and his crew, so that's why they're so much bigger and able to throw them around like rag dolls. Gonna have a little Greek snack. Then the scene of him tied to the mast of his ship screaming, everyone's screaming, is likely when they tie themselves to the ship so they won't be tempted by the siren song, which is driving them mad. We get a scene of a lot of them running back across the beach to their ships. It seems like it's on the Cyclops Island earlier in the story because you see him come through the tree line here and throw a bunch of people into the sails because they also still have their armor here too, and there are many of them. One of the other ways to chart the timeline of the trailer is how many of the men are left and whether or not they're still wearing armor and how much gray is in their hair. Then this big scene of the whirlpool big effect shot is our first look at the Charybdis, and then later the Scylla, two big sea monsters that attack the crew. There's this old idiom that was derived from the story about the two of these sea creatures, which has been associated with the proverbial to choose the lesser of two evils, because the two sea creatures are on opposite sides of the Strait of Messina between Sicily and Calabria on the Italian mainland. So the danger is that you have to pick your battle. Avoiding one danger means running into the other sea creature and vice versa. Like, which evil do you pick? Then I think there's a last shot during the Trojan War flashback scenes where the Greeks are chopping off the head of this statue is Aphrodite. She was the Trojans' patron goddess. Everybody post all your reactions in the comments below, and if you spotted any Easter eggs or references or you have any questions that I didn't talk about during the video, just write them below in the comments. Christopher Nolan and Universal are being really weird with the footage that they allow online, so maybe we'll see if there's a couple other official trailers that they allow to stick online and they don't super ban as we get closer to the movie coming out. But as we get more footage, I will do more videos. And speaking of Tom Holland and Zendaya, I just did a big Spider-Man Brand New Day video. Click here for that, and click here for all my other Odyssey trailer videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.